Okay, this is chapter 65 of The Night Singer. 65. The door to Rebecca's house swung shut behind Hannah. It felt painful to leave Rebecca with so little, but their investigation was still ongoing. They couldn't share the suspicions with her, because it was by no means certain they were correct. There were other possible reasons why Gabriel Anderson might have driven over to the Monklemosen rest area on multiple occasions since Joel was found dead there. Another kind of guilt, or his own personal tragedy that he needed to process. Deaths like this stirred up so many emotions. Eric pulled out his phone and called Ove. "How are you feeling?" he asked Hannah once they had hung up. "It is what it is. What did the boss say?" He kept his voice quiet so that it wouldn't carry into Rebecca's house. "He wants us to bring in Gabriel Anderson for an interview." That was the obvious next step, to hear what he had to say for himself. They walked over to Gabriel's house where a red Nissan was parked in the driveway. Hannah was fairly sure it was Ulrika's, and she felt the heat of the engine on the hood as she passed. There was a light on in the kitchen and Eric rang the bell. Ulrika answered the door. Since they had met her before during their interview with Lena, there was no need to show their ID. "Are you home alone?" asked Hannah. "Yes. Why?" "Could we come in?" Eric took a few steps forward as he spoke, and Ulrika backed up to let them in. She was pale and cautious in her movements and avoided looking either of them in the eye. That didn't necessarily mean a thing in and of itself. Some people were simply nervous when the police knocked on their door because they rarely brought good news. Ulrika had been anxious on their last visit too, but she had directed that nervous energy toward Lena. It was as though she didn't know what to do with it this time. Hannah wondered whether her daughter had told her about the drugs. She doubted it, but that could wait. When she reached the kitchen, Ulrika paused and glanced around before continuing to unpack her shopping. "Could we sit down?" Hannah asked. "Hold on, I just need to get the chilled things into the fridge." Ulrika carried a carton of yogurt and a tub of butter over to the fridge. She was moving slowly as though she needed a little more time to prepare herself. "Where's Gabriel?" Eric asked when Ulrika had sat down opposite them. "At work." "Where does he work?" "At the independent school in Farshton." The minute Eric mentioned Gabriel's name, tears began spilling down Ulrika's cheeks. "Can you tell us why you're crying?" asked Hannah. "I'm so worried about Gabriel." "Why?" But Ulrika was crying too hard to be able to answer. Hannah tore off a sheet of paper towel and passed it to her. Ulrika pressed it to her eyes. A moment or two later, she blew her nose. Hannah repeated her question, but Ulrika simply shook her head. "What did you do after the barbecue last Tuesday?" asked Eric. "I tidied up the worst of the mess in the kitchen, and then I went to bed." "And Gabriel?" "He did the same." "But..." It was clear that something else had happened that evening, and Ulrika was afraid to say what. She closed her eyes. Perhaps she needed to pretend they weren't there in order to answer. "He got up again while I was sleeping. I woke up and he was gone." "Did you check the time?" asked Hannah. "Yes, it was 12:30. I went to the bathroom and he wasn't there. He wasn't downstairs either." Ulrika had opened her eyes, but she avoided looking at either of them. "When did he come home?" asked Eric. "Not until 3. I couldn't get back to sleep while he was gone." "And what happened once Gabriel got back?" Ulrika didn't speak. Her face was unmoving. Hannah repeated Eric's question. "I pretended to be asleep," Ulrika eventually told them. "And what did Gabriel do?" "He put the washing machine on and then he went for a shower. It must have been at least half an hour before he got into bed. He was so drunk he walked straight into the wall next to the door." "Do you know why he was gone?" asked Eric. Ulrika's face hardened. "He's been having an affair, another one, even though he promised he'd stop. On his own birthday, too, we had such a nice evening, and then he had to go off and..." How has Gabriel been during the past few days?" The hardness was gone. Ulrika slumped forward and buried her face in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. They waited for her to finish. Eric tore off another sheet of paper towel and handed it to her. "He's been drifting around like a shadow. I've asked him what's wrong several times, but he just says it's all in my mind, that he's fine. I'm not sure he's actually at work right now. There's no way he can work in the state he's in." Another bout of tears filled the kitchen. "I should have confronted him when he got home, but I was too much of a coward." Ulrika dried her eyes and blew her nose. "I am too much of a coward. I've tried to talk to Rebecca about my suspicions, but that didn't work either." "What suspicions?" Hannah thought she could probably guess the answer, but she wanted to hear Ulrika say it out loud. "That Gabriel was involved in Joel's death somehow," Ulrika whispered. "I don't know why or how, but that's the only thing that explains why. How do you tell someone something like that?" Ulrika looked up at them as though she thought they might actually be able to answer her. Her eyes locked onto Hannah, pinning her down. Did Gabriel kill Joel? Eureka asked. Right now, all we know is that we need to talk to him. If he isn't at work, where could he be? I have no idea. I don't know anything anymore. Please try to think, said Hannah. He could be at the other woman's place, whoever she is this time.